Appreciate you clicking on this review. I just got done watching Imaginary, and with this latest horror movie, we follow a character named Jessica who decides to move back in to her childhood home with her family. Everything seems to be going nice and dandy until her youngest stepdaughter, Alice, begins to have conversations with her imaginary friend, Chauncey, uncovering a childhood trauma for Jessica she forgot she had. And well, that's all pretty much it. We didn't any spoilers, you guys. This will be a spoiler-free review. Jeff Wadlow, that's the director of this movie, and I want to stress, I don't have nothing against him personally. In fact, I hear he's actually a nice guy, which is probably how he continues to get these Blumhouse horror projects. And when I look at the Blumhouse movies he's made, Fantasy Island, Truth or Dare, immediately, those are like my least favorite Blumhouse horror movies. We know Blumhouse as a studio can be hit and miss. I would argue that they have more hits than misses, but the misses are for sure there. But whenever I see the words Blumhouse and Jeff Wadlow put together, expectations are set to the bottom floor. And, you know, just to give a little bit more grace to Jeff, he did make one movie that kind of stayed with me for a long time. Never Back Down. Oh, you want to talk about a movie that can make you feel like you're invincible and can just fight anybody left and right? It was Never Back Down. Great movie, iconic. Good job there, Jeff Wadlow. But then when the trailer for Imaginary came out, I thought, okay, there could be something there. I like this idea of a crazy, nasty teddy bear, especially with the hints of that gnarly design and transformation. This could be the first Jeff Wadlow Blumhouse horror movie I actually get into. And you know what? The movie is actually great if I imagine it to be great. Oh yeah, just that's Chauncey right there, baby. Sadly, I walked away disappointed with this one, but man, are there great ideas here. Let me get into some of the positives first. I really do think the concept thrown in Imaginary was a possibility for a big winner, but it was being held back so much. Chauncey, the teddy bear, as an antagonist, just awesome, okay? You know me and cute little toys that could end up being murderous, that's like my thing. The design of Chauncey himself when he goes into his horrible transformation, they recently released a photo of it. I thought like, dude, that's just sick. It's just nice. It's cool that it's a practical effect too. But aside from Chauncey, the movie also sets up a bit of rules. There's this list that Chauncey gives you and you have to complete items on this list, and I thought that was just some cool lore building. Not only having to go through the steps of getting the items on the list, but then what you get rewarded with by the end of that list. I'm like, dude, you're setting up something creative and interesting. And there's a small payoff of that towards the end of the movie, because I'll say the last 15-20 minutes were probably the most exciting of the film. You're put into this imaginary world that's filled with blue rooms, and every door opens up to a different memory, and there was almost like a Nightmare on Elm Street aspect to it, where in this imaginary world you could have anything you want. As long as you imagine it, it's yours. Like, the creative elements for this to actually be a pretty decent horror movie were there, but I feel like the movie just took everything at surface level and just stopped right before it got interesting. Because that's really all the positives I had to say about this movie. The rest of it is just a jumbled generic mess. There are so many elements thrown into Imaginary that end up being completely useless or leaving your head scratching going, what was the point of throwing that in there? One of those elements in particular I mentioned, you know, the main character, this is their stepdaughter. And since she's not the original mom does come into play into the movie for like 2-3 minutes, but they give her such an interesting, odd backstory, and it's never really addressed or explained why they decided to do that. There's an old lady neighbor in here that is just honestly exposition the character, where her main purpose is just to fill you in on why this could be happening, assist the main character in maybe remembering her childhood memories, and then doing that cliche thing of like, you know, legend says imaginary friends maybe do exist and they hold spiritual things. Like, we've seen that done in movies so many times. But her character herself also towards the end of the movie just gets so zany, so out of whack, and you find out she was only there for one purpose, and I can't really get into it because it's spoilers. I also think the movie suffers from a lot of the characters just being insufferable and unlikable. Like, yes, I enjoyed elements of Jessica, the main character, as well as Piper Braun, who plays Alice. Like, she's actually a pretty adorable little girl. They were the most likable of everyone in here, but even then, they're given some pretty bad dialogue. And that goes for the entirety of the cast. There's moments in here where they say things with all seriousness, and it's not supposed to be taken as a joke, but man, did me and the people in my theater end up laughing at some of the things said out loud. I'm not going to spoil the actual context behind it, but there is a ventriloquist line in this movie. You'll know it when you hear it. It is said with a straight face, all serious, and there was like 7 people in my theater just bursting out laughing that was an actual line. The movie also takes way too long to set up. There's way too much buildup that when you do get to those exciting moments towards the last 15-20 minutes, I think most people will be checked out. They'll be just done with the concept itself. Like in a movie with this kind of setup, I know you're just gonna have those scenes where, you know, the little kid's holding the bear and saying things like, I didn't do that, Chauncey did that. Like, you're just gonna have those scenes. You're gonna end up doing that stuff, but the movie overdoes it. And the thing I was even most excited about to see in this movie were, you know, the Chauncey elements and transformation scenes. I'm pretty sure Big Bear Chauncey was not originally supposed to be a big part of this movie. I think he got a lot of attention and hype from the marketing and the little bits he got in the original trailer that there was reshoots on this movie, and I can bet you all the reshoots were to include more Chauncey towards the end of the movie. Because there's this other imaginary spider character that doesn't really have an explanation. You can put 2 and 2 together on maybe why the spider character is there, but it's also very apparent that that spider character was supposed to be the main imaginary villain, that was actually supposed to be the main threat throughout the movie. But all the marketing and attention online was going towards Chauncey. The studio was like, we need to put more bear in that movie. Get more bear. Call Paddington if you have to. But you know, who the heck knows what I'm talking about, man? Because I've said it before so many times on my channel. I'm not a big fan of Truth or Dare. I don't like Fantasy Island, but I'll get people say, I like Truth or Dare. I like Fantasy Island. You don't know anything, Chris? I don't know, but there's something about these movies that just hit like the studio horror movie checkpoints where they just feel so cookie cutter, so basic, so generic, especially for PG-13 horror movies. I guess they do enough to where some people, these are like, no, this was actually fun. It was memorable. Like, the idea and concepts to me are way more interesting than what was executed when it comes to Truth or Dare, Fantasy Island, or Imaginary. I like the idea in the movie. I think those are great ideas for horror movies, but when I see what you do with it, it just falls flat. Especially because it does really feel like the studio is so limited by the PG-13 rating. It's almost like a horror movie edging you with a good movie. So when it comes to Imaginary, I'm gonna give action 2 stars. Actually, a lot of dialogue in here, and they take their sweet patootie time to do a lot of the buildup, a lot of the setup, and most of the action will not come till the last 15-20 minutes, and by then, I really do think you're checked out. Comedy in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars, mainly for the moments that were funny when the movie wasn't trying to be funny. Drama in the movie, I'm also gonna give it 2 stars. Like, the ideas and concepts were there. There's even a few twists and turns I appreciated, but the execution of it all, I just think was really lacking. Such strong ideas felt so limited here, whether for budgetary or just rating reasons, trying to stay in that PG-13 mark. Horror in the movie, I'll give 2.5 stars. There is one scene in particular that actually got me a little frightened, and that involved a therapy session with the little girl and Chauncey. That, along with the monstrous Chauncey design, I thought was really cool. But it is still PG-13 horror, so they hold back. And suspense in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. I really just could not find myself caring that much about the characters on screen, so with that, I just wasn't that interested to what danger they were being put in. Casual horror fans going in to see Imaginary, I'm gonna give it a B-. Cinephiles, I'm gonna give it a C-. And critically, I'm gonna give it an F. I think the concepts and idea in Imaginary excel more than the movie itself, and since it hits those checkbox points of typical things most people want out of a horror movie, it could be worth a watch if you rent it at home.
That'll do, Donkey. That'll do.
Again, that's just my opinion on the movie. This is the kind of horror movie that would probably do pretty great numbers on streaming, but going out of your way to go check this out in theaters, I think a lot of people would regret their time and go, what was that? Let me know your guys' opinion if you got around seeing Imaginary, what you like, what you didn't like. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.